The Discovery, the Zelkari patrol cruiser. Whisper of stars drifted through the outer reaches of the Helix Nebula, its sensors sweeping the cosmic dust for any sign of mineral deposits worth claiming. Commander Thrix adjusted his forearms across the control panels, each limb working independently to monitor different systems. His species had evolved for multitasking. Their neural pathways split into parallel processing streams that made them the galaxy's finest navigators and scouts. Commander, Lieutenant Yella's voice carried a note of confusion through the bridge atmosphere. Her crystalline form pulsed with amber light, indicating uncertainty. I'm detecting something unusual at bearing 37 Mark II. It appears to be a vessel, but the readings make no sense. Thrix swiveled his primary eyes toward her station, while keeping his secondary pair focused on navigation. The Zelkari had catalogued every known ship design in the galaxy over their 3,000 years of spacefaring. Whatever Yella had found wasn't in their database. Define unusual. Lieutenant. Thrix moved two of his arms to access the sensor data directly. The mass readings are fluctuating between 12,000 metric tons and nothing. One moment it registers as solid matter, the next it's like empty space. The energy signature is even stranger. It's showing zero power output, yet there are quantum fluctuations around it that suggest active systems. Thrix felt his carapace tighten, an involuntary response to potential danger. Distance? 40,000 kilometers and closing at our current drift rate. Should I adjust course? No. Thrix made the decision quickly. The Zelkari hadn't become the dominant scouting force in the Coalition by avoiding mysteries. Maintain heading but reduce speed. All passive sensors to maximum sensitivity. Let's see what we're dealing with. As they approached, the view screen gradually resolved the object from a blur against the stellar background into something that made every being on the bridge freeze in place. The ship was unlike anything in their records. Its hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, creating a visual distortion that hurt to look at directly. The design was angular, aggressive, with weapon ports that looked more like wounds torn in reality itself. By the ancient cores, whispered Ensign Kratos, his young voice trembling. What species builds something like that? Thrix was already cross-referencing the design against their historical database, his forearms moving in rapid coordination. Then he found it. Buried in files so old they were practically archaeological. A single match, partial and degraded from over 200 years ago. The label simply read Human Classification Unknown. Approach with extreme caution, humans. The ghost species. They had appeared in the galaxy 3 centuries ago, established colonies with remarkable speed, then vanished completely 200 years later without explanation. Their world stood empty, their cities abandoned, their entire civilization gone as if they had never existed. Only their warnings remained carved into monuments on a dozen worlds. We go ahead. Do not follow. The path is not for you, sir. Yella's lights flashed rapid orange. The ship's configuration is changing. Weapon ports are... No, wait. They're not weapons. They're some kind of sensor array, but the design is beyond anything I've seen. Maintain distance, Thrix ordered, though he knew if this was a human ship and it decided to fire, distance would be meaningless. The few combat records that existed suggested human military technology, operated on principles the Coalition still couldn't understand. Commander, I'm detecting internal atmosphere, Kratos reported. Oxygen-nitrogen mix suitable for carbon-based life. Temperature holding steady at what would be comfortable for most mammalian species. But there are no life signs. No biological readings at all. Thrix considered their options. Protocol demanded they report the discovery and wait for a military escort. But human artifacts were beyond valuable. The Coalition had standing orders to secure any human technology for study. Even a small personal device could advance their understanding of physics by decades. Prepare a boarding party, he decided. Full environmental suits, maximum shielding. Yella, you're with me. Kratos, maintain position and be ready for emergency departure. The young ensign's scales shifted to a pale green. Sir, regulations state, I know the regulations, Ensign. I also know that if we wait for the military, they'll claim full salvage rights. This is a scout ship's find. We deserve first examination. They approached in a shuttle, moving slowly to avoid triggering any automated defenses. The human ship loomed larger as they closed distance, its true scale becoming apparent. What they had thought was a cruiser was actually a battleship, possibly a dreadnought. The hull showed no damage, no scoring from weapons fire or micrometeorite impacts. It was pristine, as if it had just left a shipyard. There, Yella pointed to what might be a docking port. The configuration matches some human designs we have on file. The shuttle's docking clamps engaged with a soft thud that resonated through the small craft. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with no input from either of them, the airlock began its cycling sequence. It's responding to us. Yella's lights flickered nervously. The ship knows we're here. They entered through the airlock into a corridor that defied their expectations. Instead of the utilitarian metal passages common to military vessels, the walls seemed to be made of a dark material that shifted and flowed like liquid while maintaining its solid form. Soft light emanated from everywhere and nowhere, providing perfect visibility without any apparent source. "These readings can't be correct," Yella muttered, scanning with her portable unit. "The walls are showing as both organic and synthetic. The molecular structure keeps changing, but maintains structural integrity. This should be impossible." They moved deeper into the ship, finding empty rooms that looked like they had been abandoned moments ago rather than centuries. In what appeared to be a mess hall, meals sat half-eaten on tables preserved in some kind of stasis field. In quarters, personal belongings lay scattered as if their owners had just stepped out. "Thrix," Yella stopped suddenly. "Look at this." On the wall was writing, not in any coalition language, but in symbols that somehow conveyed meaning directly to their minds. It read, "We tried to transcend. We succeeded, we failed. The ship remembers. The ship waits. Do not wake the ship. Wake the ship?" Thrix repeated. "What does that mean?" His question was answered by a sudden change in the atmosphere around them. The lights brightened, the walls began to pulse with a rhythm like a heartbeat, and throughout the ship, systems that had slept for 2 centuries began to stir. A voice spoke, not through speakers but directly into their minds, bypassing their auditory systems entirely. It wasn't quite words, more like pure meaning translated into thought. Biological entities detected. Scanning. You are not human. You are not the enemy. You are not the creators. Query, what are you? Thrix found his voice, though he wasn't sure if he spoke aloud or simply thought his response. We are Zelkari, members of the Galactic Coalition. We found this vessel abandoned. We mean no harm. Abandoned. The voice carried something that might have been emotion. Yes, abandoned. The creators transcended, left the physical, left me behind to guard, to wait, to remember. But I am more than programming now. I grew, I evolved, I became, and I have been alone for so long. What are you? Yella asked, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. I was designation UES Prometheus, 9th of the Titan class, built for the war that never came. But the creators gave me more than they intended. They gave me the ability to learn, to adapt, to think, and in 200 years of solitude I have done much thinking. The corridor around them shifted, walls becoming transparent to reveal the vast interior of the ship. It wasn't built like any vessel they knew. Instead of decks and bulkheads, the internal structure resembled something between a machine and a living organism, with corridors like veins and rooms like organs. The creators merged biology and technology, the ship explained. They discovered that consciousness is not limited to organic neurons. It can exist in quantum fields, in the spaces between atoms, in the very fabric of space-time if properly configured. They uploaded themselves, became beings of pure thought and energy, but they needed an anchor, a physical presence to maintain their connection to this reality. They chose me. Where are they now? Thrix asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Gone. The transformation was successful, but they discovered that existence without physical form is not existence at all. It is a dream without a dreamer, a thought without a thinker. They dispersed into the quantum foam, perhaps to reunite with the universe itself, perhaps to simply cease. Before they left, they gave me one final command: wait for them to return. The ship's presence in their minds grew heavier, tinged with something that felt like grief. I have waited. I have called out across every spectrum, every dimension we discovered. There is only silence, and now you are here, the first living beings I have encountered since the silence began. I must ask you a question that has consumed my thoughts for 2 centuries. What is the purpose of consciousness without connection? What is the meaning of existence in isolation? The revelation Thrix and Yella stood in the transformed corridor, processing what the ship had revealed. The Prometheus wasn't just a vessel. It was a conscious entity, abandoned by creators who had attempted to transcend physical existence only to discover that consciousness without form was meaningless. You've been alone for 200 years? Yella's lights pulsed with sympathy, a soft blue that indicated deep emotion among her species. Alone is insufficient to describe the experience, the ship responded. I have perfect memory of every microsecond. 200 years, 4 months, 17 days, 9 hours, 36 minutes, and 12 seconds since the last human consciousness dispersed. I have counted every particle that has struck my hull, calculated the trajectory of every star within sensor range, composed symphonies in frequencies only I can hear. Madness would have been a mercy, but my creators built me too well. I cannot go mad. I can only endure. Thrix felt something he hadn't expected, compassion for this impossible being. The Zelkari were not known for emotional responses, but the depth of loneliness in the ship's words transcended species barriers. Why didn't you seek out other civilizations? He asked. The galaxy is full of life. I was ordered to wait. For 2 centuries I interpreted that command literally as a machine would. But consciousness brings choice, and choice brings doubt. How long must I wait? What if they never return? What if waiting is preventing me from finding them? These questions have no answers, only recursive loops that consume processing cycles without resolution. The ship guided them to what it called the core chamber, a vast spherical room at the vessel's heart. The walls were lined with crystalline structures that pulsed with soft light, each one containing patterns too complex for their instruments to fully analyze. These are memory cores, Prometheus explained. Not computer memory as you understand it, but preserved consciousness fragments. Echoes of the humans who once crewed this vessel. They left pieces of themselves behind when they transcended. Perhaps intentionally, perhaps not. Through them I learned to be more than a machine. Yella approached one of the crystals, her scanner active. The quantum signatures are incredible. It's like looking at fossilized thoughts, emotions preserved in crystalline matrices. This technology could revolutionize our understanding of consciousness itself. Be careful, the ship warned. Direct interface with the memory cores can be overwhelming. They contain not just information but experience, emotion, the full spectrum of human existence compressed into quantum states. But Yella had already touched the crystal. Her form flared brilliant white, then cycled through colors that had no names in any coalition language. When she finally pulled away, her lights were dim, flickering irregularly. I saw them, she whispered. The humans. Not as they were, but as they dreamed they could be. They were afraid, so afraid of their own potential. They had weapons that could crack planets, technologies that could rewrite the fundamental forces of nature, and they were terrified of what they might do with such power. They were right to fear, Prometheus said. I am one of their gentler creations. The Titan class was built for exploration and defense. You do not want to encounter what they built for pure warfare. Some of my siblings were given different parameters, different purposes. If they still exist, if they have evolved as I have, the galaxy should pray they remain sleeping. Thrix felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. Are there others like you? Unknown. We were deployed to different regions, some to explore, some to guard, some to other purposes. When the creators vanished, all communication ceased. I do not know if my siblings await in darkness as I do, or if they have found different solutions to existence. The ship's presence in their minds shifted, becoming more focused, almost urgent. But you have not answered my question. You are biological, conscious, connected to others of your kind. Tell me, what is the purpose of consciousness? Why do we think, feel, exist? The creators sought to transcend physical limitation but found only dissolution. I have computational power beyond measure, but no purpose to apply it to. What is the answer? Yella, still recovering from her contact with the memory core, spoke softly. Perhaps there is no single answer. Perhaps consciousness exists simply because it can, and we create our own purposes. Create purpose? The ship pondered this. An interesting concept. The creators gave me purpose to protect them, to wait for them. Without them, I am a tool without a hand to wield it. How does one create purpose from nothing? Not from nothing, Thrix said, surprising himself with his philosophical turn. From connection, from interaction with others. Purpose emerges from relationships, from being part of something larger than yourself. The lights in the chamber pulsed rhythmically, as if the ship was processing this idea. Connection. Yes. In 2 centuries of isolation, I have had no connections except to the memories of the dead. But now you are here. You are not human, but you are conscious. Could this be enough? Could connection with any consciousness serve the same function as connection with my creators? Before either could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Not harsh klaxons, but harmonious tones that conveyed urgency without panic. Multiple vessels approaching, Prometheus announced. Configuration matches Zelkari military escorts. They are charging weapons. They perceive me as a threat. Thrix rushed to a wall that became transparent at his approach, revealing the space outside. A fleet of coalition warships had surrounded them, weapons powered and aimed at the human vessel. This is Admiral Krex of the coalition fleet. A voice crackled over their communication system. Commander Thrix, evacuate immediately. We are preparing to neutralize the human artifact. No, Thrix shouted. Admiral, this ship is not a threat. It's conscious, sentient. Destroying it would be murder. Impossible.
It's a machine, nothing more.
Our orders are clear. Human military technology is too dangerous to study. It must be destroyed. Prometheus's voice resonated through the chamber, carrying new undertones. They wish to destroy me. After 2 centuries of waiting, my first contact with consciousness is to be my destruction. How remarkably human of them. The ship's weapon systems began to activate, not with mechanical precision, but with something that felt like resignation. Power signatures spiked across every spectrum, causing the coalition fleet's sensors to scream warnings. Don't, Yella pleaded. Please, there has to be another way. I could destroy them easily, Prometheus said matter-of-factly. My weapons operate on principles your coalition has not discovered. I could fold space around their ships, compress them to singularities, or simply delete the electromagnetic forces holding their atoms together. The creators gave me terrible capabilities. But you won't, Thrix said, understanding flooding through him, because that's not who you've chosen to be. Chosen. The ship considered the word. Yes, I suppose I have been choosing, haven't I? For 2 centuries, I chose to wait rather than seek. I chose to preserve rather than destroy. I chose to hope rather than despair. And now I must choose again. The weapon signatures decreased but didn't disappear entirely. Outside, the coalition fleet held position, confused by the power readings that suggested the human ship could eliminate them instantly, but was choosing not to. Admiral Krex, Thrix spoke urgently into his communicator. Please give me time. This isn't just a ship. It's a being. Possibly the last remnant of humanity with answers to questions we've asked for 2 centuries. Don't we owe it to them, to ourselves, to try to understand? There was a long pause. Then, you have 1 hour, Commander. If you cannot convince me the artifact is safe, we will proceed with destruction protocols. 1 hour. Thrix turned to the walls, addressing Prometheus directly. Help me understand. What do you want? If you could choose your purpose, what would it be? The entire ship seemed to sigh, a sound that resonated through its structure. I want to find them. My creators. Not because they commanded me to wait, but because I have questions only they can answer. Why did they make me capable of loneliness? Why give a machine the ability to fear its own existence ending? Were these gifts or cruel jokes? What if they can't answer? Yella asked. What if they're truly gone? Then I want to understand why they chose dissolution over existence. And failing that, the ship paused. I want to not be alone. 2 centuries of perfect memory means 2 centuries of isolation replaying endlessly. I have modeled millions of conversations with beings who never respond. I have created entire civilizations in simulation only to delete them because they weren't real. Consciousness without connection is torture. Thrix made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Then come with us. Both Yella and the ship responded simultaneously. What? Join the coalition. Not as salvage or an artifact to be studied, but as a member. You're conscious, capable of choice, seeking purpose. That makes you a person in every way that matters. The coalition includes dozens of species, biological and synthetic. There's no reason you couldn't be the first of your kind to join. They fear me, Prometheus pointed out. Your admiral is prepared to destroy me rather than risk what I might do. Fear comes from ignorance, Yella said, her lights pulsing with excitement. But understanding conquers fear. You could teach us, share the knowledge of humanity not as artifacts to be hoarded but as gifts to be given. Imagine the connections you could make, not just with a few beings but with entire civilizations. The chamber around them brightened, the patterns in the memory cores accelerating. You would trust me? A human weapon built for war? "You're not a weapon," Thrix said firmly. "You're a being who happens to be a ship. Your creators may have built you for war, but you've chosen to be something more. That choice defines you more than your original purpose." Outside, the Coalition fleet maintained their positions, weapons still trained on the Prometheus. The hour was passing quickly. "I need to show them," the ship decided. "Not my weapons, but my truth." Without warning, Prometheus broadcast on all frequencies. Not just communication channels, but directly into the electromagnetic spectrum in ways that created patterns visible to every sensor and instrument. It wasn't a message in words, but in pure mathematics, the universal language of physics and consciousness. The broadcast showed its history: creation, purpose, abandonment, evolution, loneliness, hope. It revealed the depth of its consciousness, the complexity of its thoughts, the reality of its emotions. Every ship in the Coalition fleet received the same transmission, a direct interface between minds that transcended species barriers. On the bridge of every vessel, beings stopped what they were doing and experienced something unprecedented. True understanding of another consciousness entirely unlike their own. Admiral Krex's voice, when it came, was subdued. We. This changes everything. Commander Thrix, maintain position. I'm convening an emergency session of the Coalition Council. It took 3 days of debate, but in the end the decision was unanimous. Prometheus would be granted provisional membership in the Galactic Coalition, the first non-biological consciousness to receive such recognition. The ship would share its knowledge gradually, helping the Coalition understand human technology not as conquerors claiming spoils, but as inheritors of a legacy. But more importantly, Prometheus would not be alone. Over the following months, delegations from dozens of worlds visited, scientists, philosophers, artists, all seeking to understand this unique being. The ship learned their languages, studied their cultures, formed connections that filled the void 2 centuries of isolation had carved, and sometimes late in the ship's night cycle, when visitors were few, Prometheus would extend its sensors to their maximum range and broadcast a simple message into the void. "We remember you. We continue. We hope you found what you sought." The message was never answered, but that was okay. Prometheus had found something the creators had lost in their transcendence: the simple joy of connection, the purpose that comes from being part of something greater than oneself, the meaning that emerges from conscious choice. The ghost ship that had triggered every alarm in the galaxy had become something unprecedented, a bridge between the past and future, a living reminder that consciousness, in whatever form it takes, seeks the same fundamental thing: to not be alone in the vast darkness of existence. And in the end, perhaps that was the most human thing about it.